Hello and welcome to another episode of the Dad Strength Podcast. I am your host, Richie Leahey. We are continuing with the same format we left off with last week, going to a little bit more laid back, a little bit more personal look at some items in parenting. Again, like I said last week, we still have the video component, and that's broken up onto our YouTube channel, so check that out if you prefer those. I'm still working on expanding our post format. So basically, as a parent, if you're into the show, if you're a listener, please go to dadstrength.us, and each week we put out a new episode, and that episode focuses on an area of parenting that's important. And I've thought about maybe down the line, once we get some more content in place, putting a link to like our most popular pages. That will probably happen just to help people who are new to the site, and maybe do like a most popular video list, or even on the site, if I link to them, then you can see the most popular episodes, and then you can download them on the podcast or whatever. And then the video, probably do that once we get going a bit more, as I've only started to tinker with those. Again, just a recap, if you missed last week, no longer putting the full audio only on YouTube. Just weren't getting enough listens on there. So we're only going on video only, where I break down and show parenting items. Some of them are going to be a little bit different than the podcast now that I'm doing some research and making my list. And the reason behind that is some of them just don't lend themselves to the podcast if you can't see them. And that's some of the more complex toys or whatever. So I'll still talk about, in general, the topic or whatever, but I can't show my object on the podcast. It's just too hard. I can probably sit and explain it, but that's probably just boring. And I don't want that to happen. So that's pretty much it. Our daughter's basically going to be, she's one and a half pretty much. Yeah, I think that is. She might be a little bit older than 1.5. Her birthday's in September, so whatever that works out to be here in February. And as she's getting older, I noticed that she's more active, and we already went through the headache of teething. But one of the objects that we brought in for the ranking board this week was pacifiers, and that's something that we looked at a little bit as parents, but realistically, we didn't even use them. When our daughter was born, she slept pretty much through the night, and I know we might be lucky there. I've mentioned it before. That's not something that, if your kid doesn't sleep through the night, I'm not really sure I can tell you what we did, but I don't know if it translates 1-to-1. Every child's different. And so basically, she has her stuffed animal. She slept with that. I mentioned it before on the podcast, but I slept with the stuffed animal for a few weeks before she was born, a couple months actually, so that the stuffed animal would get my scent on it, because I've heard that helps children sleep. It makes them feel safe. And so that's what we went with. And there were a few times when she first started to switch, because we had to use like a drip system to feed her, like a supplemental one, because she wasn't getting enough nutrients from the milk. So we did like that. So when we switched to only breast milk, and we did like some bottles, she did have trouble drinking from them, and we used a pacifier to help build up that strength, and it soothed her a little bit. Like, she would cry, I would give her the pacifier, but after a while, when she would cry, she wouldn't cry for very long. She'd only cry if she's hungry. And once we got in the habit of feeding her when she cried, and I could tell the difference between like a pain cry and a food cry, then we didn't even really need the pacifier. I know some people swear by them. They put it in there. Their child needs it to sleep. But I never just started that habit. We never went ahead and gave her one when she went to sleep. I know if you do use them, you have to be careful, because it will mess up their teeth because of the sucking motion as they get older and their muscles develop and their teeth start to come in. But we didn't even use one. So we used it a few times, and we had a whole bunch of them, because when she was born, I didn't know what to do. So actually, it was like that Christmas, we gave her like a stocking and let her like play through it. even though she could barely move. We held her up and she like pulled things out with her hands. And basically we just got her a bunch of pacifiers and things that we thought she would need. And she didn't even need them. I would recommend, if you are looking at pacifiers, they have different sizes and types. Try to get one of each style in the size that you need. And then once you find out if they like one or not, then only buy that one. So don't mix them up. Some people are like, oh, I'll get one that, because like some packs have multiple sizes in it. It's like grow with your child, whatever. At least whenever I bought them months ago. And so like you would get one brand and it would have like a size, I don't even know what they are. They're like 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9 or something like that. I don't think they have numbers on it. But if you went ahead and looked at the different sizes, you would have bought them, and you don't know if your child's going to like that style, because some of them are bent up and some of them are just pretty much flat. Some of them are more rounded bulbs. Some of them mimic like a nipple pretty much. And so if your child is breastfed, they might prefer that one. Some of the ones that are bent provide more suction. So as your child uses them, they'll get used to that, and it will help keep it in their mouth and keep them sucking. And maybe they'll get away from them whenever they get older and you need a different style. I don't know, but I would recommend testing them out before you start to buy a bunch of different pacifiers. Because yeah, they are pretty cheap, but the cost will start to add up, and you don't want that to happen, because once they start to add up, then you're going to go ahead and you're going to have trouble down the line having a bunch of different pacifiers that you don't use. And if your child needs them to sleep, you're going to have to keep buying them, and they are very easy to lose. I've lost a few just because they're sitting on top of our stroller, and then whenever you're going through and you're folding the stroller up to throw in the back of my truck, they pop off and go flying, and I don't even realize it because I don't even remember that they were on there in the first place, and then we lose them. And so I recommend, if you are going to get them, try to get the ones. Some of them have like a lanyard holder or like a little ring or loop that goes with them. Go ahead and get those ones, and then throw a lanyard on them. You could even tie a rope or a string on them. And once you have those on there, then you tie it to whatever your child's using. So like our daughter would use her stroller, she'd use her car seat. I tie one right there on the end, so if she needed it. We tried to set that up. She didn't even grab for it. We put a book on there. She grabbed for the book, but she would not grab for the actual pacifier itself. And so that's when we realized, like, hey, maybe she's never ever going to use these pacifiers. I don't know. I didn't know too much offhand if she was going to use them or not. But whenever we first looked at them, I tried to get a bunch of different styles. So we have tried a ton of different styles. So it wasn't the style of the pacifier that turned her off. She just wasn't one of those kids. So to me, that's not an essential item at all. There are much more other essential items out there. And I did find, whenever I bought these pacifiers, I found one that was like a raspberry teether pacifier. And she loves that one. Has she used it as a pacifier? No. She used the teether part, not how they wanted you to use it, because they wanted you to, it's like rubber, and they wanted you to fill it up with water, and then you freeze it, and the child would like it. Then it wouldn't be squishy though, and she liked chewing on it with the squishiness, and so that's why she liked that one. And I actually had to go out and find it, because I had to find another one because I was afraid I was going to lose it. It did have the ring on it that like you could tie to places, but knowing myself, I easily could misplace that or throw that somewhere. And so I went out and got a couple more just because, and they were hard to find too. I don't even think they make them anymore. But it was just a little raspberry ring that was squishy and gummy that she could chew on, kind of like a teether more than a pacifier. So I don't even show that one on the YouTube video because there's no point to it, because I don't know. And that way you go ahead and you're looking at pacifiers. Our daughter preferred a teether, and that was fine with me, because then I don't have to worry about her breaking it down the line, maybe sucking her thumb. She did do that a little bit, but not too much, not enough that she would need something to suffice or give her that extra energy whenever she was doing like a bottle or something. She would eat, and as she was eating, she'd fall asleep. So once she reached that point where she was able to fall asleep from a feeding, that was it. She was pretty much lights out. We didn't have to worry about trying to get something to her to help her fall asleep. She was able to fall asleep on her own, and so it worked out well for us. And that's pretty much all we did in regards to pacifiers. And that's pretty much all I have today for this week. I've been busy working on expanding the website. Not really expanding it. Since we broke it off into its own site, I've been working on just getting the extra content up and going on the site. And with that, the rankings page, because I think that's going to be the focus of the show. Talking about different objects, bringing them in. We have talked about the milestones. Those are still up. All the old episodes are still available for download if you need to go through. So if you're checking out the show for the first time, go through. You can listen to the old episodes. The show used to be focused on just covering parts of child development. We've kind of switched off a little bit as we broke off from our other parent site to just looking at different objects used by children and how essential they are to dads or parents, and if you really need them or not, because a lot of hype is put into a materialistic world. You need certain things when realistically you do not. Our format's still going to be a shorter show. Probably try to keep it. We used to try to keep it under 15 minutes, but a lot of times we go over that. So I'd say anywhere between 15, 20 minutes, maybe under that. Some shows like this one with pacifiers, we just didn't really use them. And it is something that you need to talk about because as parents, that is an essential item. They have that on the list. I'm pretty sure it's on every baby registry. And deep down, we didn't use them. I wouldn't buy them again. I have a bag sitting here that I'm looking at that I showed in the recording that I don't even think she used half of these. I don't even remember them being around. And we tried to use them because when your child's crying, you'll try anything to put them to sleep, or at least to get them to quit crying. So it's not for lack of trying on our part. She just didn't want them. And so how essential them are they? To me, not that essential at all. So we're putting that out there. They're on the rankings list. Go to our website, dadstrength.us. Click on the rankings tab and go ahead and vote. Do you think pacifiers are essential as a parent or not? And so next week we'll be bringing in some other objects. I already had 5 objects on the site before we started doing the videos. So burp cloths and baby wipes, I think, are the 2 we have left. So next week, look for one of those. Not sure which one I'm going to do. It depends. Some of the stuff we already packed away. I know that's probably what we're going to talk about. So I should have started these earlier. But as we're packing stuff away, I'm finding out things like, hey, I see him in the box. Did we really use that? No, we didn't. And then I go back to it, and maybe we do need it now. Maybe the child needed it. Maybe the second child, if we have another one, they'll need it. I don't know. So every parent's different. Every child's different. So help us find the most essential items for new parents that have no idea by going to our site and voting. And hope you check it out. If you have any questions, I'm thinking about doing a question and answer segment to the show, probably starting at the end of this month or next month. So fill out any questions. We have a contact form. Send the questions there. You can go ahead and give me a call, leave a voicemail on our Google Voice number, and we'll be played on the show if you do that. So go ahead, reach out to us. Let me know. Thank you for listening. You've been listening to Dad Strength with Richie Leahey.